Hey everyone. I just realized that I was sitting here thinking the countdown screen was showing and it wasn't. So thanks for sticking with me. Um, Welcome to RockSim Live. I'm Michelle. I'm not Tim, and he is at a rocket launch this weekend in Arizona. So if you're in Arizona at the rocket launch, I don't know exactly where in Arizona. Um, he um, Yay, Carlos says audio and video, always good. Um, but yeah, if you're at the rocket launch in Arizona, say hi to Tim. I don't think he's staying the whole weekend. He might just be flying maybe today or maybe today and tomorrow. I don't exactly know when he's coming back. Um, but there's a competition like FAI competition or competition launch going on. So that's where he is at this week. So I'm filling in. Um, and I'm so happy everything's working. You ever have one of those days where just like nothing is going right, especially nothing technological related? Um, it's just been a little bit bonkers, and trying to get the studio set up. Tim left it set up for something completely different, and I was scrambling at the last minute to try and get things set up right, and then things weren't working, and the camera had all sorts of things on the screen. It was very exciting. So I think we're all set and running now. So hopefully everything is okay. And if you have any problems, if you can't hear me or if I forget to do something, just let me know. I'm a little bit kerfuffled now with all the problems from today. Um, so we have two emails that Tim had actually answered for customers, but sent to me to talk about. But otherwise, it would be great if you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat. I will attempt to answer them. Um, if not, I will pass them along to Tim to answer next week. He will be back next week or should be for that. And so you're all there, right? Carlos is the only one. Like I see the hellos from 3D printer guy and Carlos. Um, Carlos says, "Well, Apogee shipping always works right. That's great. FedEx was down earlier, and so we were trying to ship internationally and couldn't. So it's just been a day. It's working now, so we're able to get the order out. But that was sometimes it's outside of our control too. So yes, I will start then. I guess with the first question that was emailed in. Um, so Stanley had emailed in asking about, he's saying that the RockSim, I'm going to switch to my screen before I forget. Um, RockSim doesn't remember the motors um, from one simulation to the next. So he says, I would like to have the software recall the motors that I used in a previous simulation without having to input the motors all over again. Tim interpreted this question one way. I actually interpreted it a different way. So depending on which way you interpret the question, this is why explaining things or being really detailed really helps because you could see two different questions in this question. So Tim's answer, um, I will show you here. So say you fly a rocket. I think all my I clean my desktop off before I do this every week because it's usually pretty cluttered, and so all my RockSim files just go away because that's where they were when I tested them for whatever reason. So let me go to let's try this one. This is the Antares Explorer. This is our new one of our newest rocket. I think it's the newest one. We got so many things in the works right now that I lose track of which rockets are actually released and which ones are coming up soon. So we should have a new one, or we should have it next Tuesday, another one coming out. But this is the Antares Explorer here. Um, so, anyways, motors, right? So you can see here there were some um, here. I'm having mouse issues too, moving between my external monitor and the computer. So say last time you flew this, you flew it on a C11.5, but like I reopened it, and you'll notice since this is the first time I've opened it, there's no motor loaded in it. So instead of having to go in and going to load motor, choose engine, find the motor you want in the list, if you've flown it before. So say you have motors that you pretty much always fly Estes black powder motors. So what you can do is you can run your simulations one time, and then you say, oh, this weekend I'm going to a club launch, but it's going to be a little windier, or it's at a different location. And so I want to change. Oh, started already. I want to change the data. So what you can do here is, instead of doing that whole load engines, find it in the list, you can actually go to your previous simulation and right click. There we go. I forgot how to right click. Is it the weekend yet? Um, so you right click, and then you can either click load engines, which will just load the engines from the last time, or if you're wanting to use the same simulation to rerun it, you can click edit. Edit will pull all the original, like, starting state, simulation, launch conditions. If you click edit and you change something, like say, instead of 700 feet, we're at 7,000 feet. We're not quite at 7,000 feet here in Colorado Springs, but we're pretty darn close. We're closer to 6,000 really, but yeah, so you just change that. So now if I click launch, so everything's the same motor, same wind settings, and I click launch, it's going to replace the old data. So if you don't want to replace the old data, then instead of clicking edit, you can click load engines, and then this will, now you can set up your simulation using whatever. So like this one, see, it's got the altitude of 6,000 where I had 7,000 in the other one. So, and then when I click launch, it's going to generate a new line. So, oh my gosh, I think I stopped moving for the first time today. Now I'm falling asleep. So your options are edit, which will rerun that simulation, so it'll delete the old data, or load engines, which will just load the engines, and then you can go in and use different settings. So like if you're changing launch sites, but you want to keep the old launch site or whatever, you can use the load engines instead. I When I read Stanley's email, maybe that's what he meant actually, because it doesn't load it when you first come in. So that's simple. I can also read into it that he's asking like between kits. So I have a bunch of D12.5s that I want to fly, and I want to test a bunch of different rockets. So I'm using the Antares Explorer here, and then when I go to the next one, I'm going to launch, instead of the Antares Explorer, I'm going to launch, trying to think of another rocket that'll fly on the Rising Star. And I go here. Well, this just happens to have a T12.5 in there, but it doesn't load it. And RockSim won't remember your motors kit to kit. That's kit specific. So, so yeah, depending on how you interpret the email, but you can always, if you've run the same motor before, just right click and then choose from there as well. So go back to the chat. Sturko3 says, I had trouble getting a body coupler to the right weight between two 38mm body tubes. Could you review body couplers? They showed way too much weight. Okay, so yes, so couplers, this one has a coupler in it. So the mass or the weight of a part in RockSim is based on a couple things. So first, when you go into the part, you will tell it the material. So paper weighs less than aluminum or PVC. If you had paper means like cardboard paper, like standard, kit coupler. But think about a low power coupler versus a high power coupler. They're both made, oh, I'm sorry. They're both made out of like that rolled paper, but they're different thicknesses or different weight paper can change that. So it starts with kind of a generalization, and all of these are materials that you could make a coupler out of. I don't know why pine is showing. I don't really know people who make couplers out of pine wood, but you know. Um, so there's a bunch of different options. Blue tube, carbon fiber, cardboard also could fall under the paper, depending. So these materials have a density in RockSim, and to see the density of paper, this may be super detailed, and we'll get to the workaround here in a second, but just for informational purposes, if you go to the Rocket menu and you click Edit Database Materials, and then you'll see tube couplers down here. So, oh wait, this is to edit, never mind. That's if you want to actually edit things in there, which we can do from the other screen. If you go to Edit Database Materials, I'm getting myself confused. So these are those materials that show up in the that drop-down menu. These are all the materials in RockSim. So obviously couplers don't use a lot of these. You know, you don't make couplers out of like nylon that you'd make a parachute out of. So you can turn them on or off here. One, you know, in computer code, 0 means off, 1 means on. So the ones mean, and if you click on one to edit, you could turn it on and off. Like I can take my pine, click edit, and turn it off for tube coupler because I don't need pine in my tube couplers. So this is where it pulls it. So paper shows a density of 70 pounds per cubic foot. Is that correct? I don't know. They should be pretty accurate. Somebody at some point pulled these. But again, paper, you know, you have printer paper that's real thin, printer paper that's really thick, cardstock paper. So it's just kind of a default. So it uses this density. So okay, back to our coupler now. So we've chosen our material. So that's a good place to start. Make sure your material is right. If it says PVC and it's made out of paper in real life, obviously you're going to have a weight discrepancy there. Then it uses these parameters. So the outer diameter and inner diameter. So what that means is the difference between those two is the wall thickness. So again, talking about those low power versus high power couplers, a low power coupler, you know, can have a wall thickness of 0.0 something, you know, whereas a high power coupler might have a 1/4 inch or maybe even, I don't know, about a 1/2 inch, but, you know, it can be really thick because it needs to be strong. So that wall thickness and then the length, that's how they get the density. They take the density times the basic like amount volume of that wall thickness, and that's how they get this mass of, you know, 0.35 ounces or 9.96 grams per that. So all those things contribute to the weight. But like I said, you know, paper can be a bunch of different things. So a bunch of different types of paper, weights, you know, heavier, lighter. So this is just, it's math, and simple as that. So if you have a coupler that doesn't weigh this the same amount, you have a couple different options. One, you could try and figure out the density of the paper, put that paper into the materials database here, and then have it calculate. That's a lot of work because you're going to have to go back and forth unless you made the coupler yourself, like how you would figure out, you know, you have to unmath, like reverse the math. That's a lot of work. Most of us don't want to deal with that. So option 2 is to go here to this mass override tab. And this basically says, I don't agree with this calculated component mass. It's not 9.97 grams. It's 4 grams. So we check the box to say, I want to override it. I want RockSim to just ignore this calculated component mass. And you'll notice this note now comes on that says mass override is on. Then you'll put the mass of your actual coupler is, so you can weigh your physical coupler if you have it, or look it up online if you're waiting for it or something. But so I say, oh, this is ounces. That's going to get ugly fast. Got grams and ounces in one place in those. So we'll say 4 grams. The other thing you have to do is give it a center of gravity. If you leave it at 0, the center of gravity is going to be the front of that piece. So it says that if you were to balance that piece on your finger, it's going to balance on the very front tip. which basically is never true for any part ever. For something symmetrical like a coupler, it's going to be the middle. So you know, if you're not sure, or if it's an odd shaped thing like a nose cone or fins, you can actually balance it on your finger. You know, take your nose cone and stick it on your finger and find that balance point. But for like a tube or a coupler that's symmetrical, everything's the same on both ends, you know that the balance point's going to be halfway. So if this coupler is 4 inches, then we know that the CG is going to be 2 inches back. So now we've told RockSim, I don't care if you think this coupler is 9.97 grams, we're going to tell you the coupler is actually 4 grams. And so that will override the weight for that there. The other option, like if you have a coupler, say you bought a coupler from us or from another vendor, and the coupler in the database, so you want to choose a part from a database and it's just wrong in the database and you know it's wrong, you can actually go up here again to that Rocket Edit Database tube couplers, and this will edit it in the database. So for every Rocket going forward, you can say, no, it's going to be this amount. And so you can go find that coupler that this is a 56 for the rising star rate. So this says the mass here is 11.8 ounces. So if you highlight it and click edit, you can tell it that no, it's actually like 9.9, which is what it's calculated. I'm not sure why it's different, other than I know it's calculating things. So, so here, so you can go in and change this here. So hopefully, oh, yeah. Something's up with units here because that window said ounces, but now look, it's 9.9 grams. So I don't, there might be a bug, or I might have just done something dumb because it's been a Friday. But yes, you can edit these things in the database. So going forward, if you want to scratch build a rocket with this coupler, you know it's right. So those are kind of the two different ways that you can edit a coupler's weight or any part's weight if you disagree with RockSim. We had somebody go through before we released RockSim 10 and update all of our parts, but it was done by a human, and so we found a couple errors, just human error entering things. So I know, you know, there's been a couple over time, and I have a whole email list to kind of fix things before we release the next version of RockSim. Some little tiny things. So if you do find something like that, that's just, you know, hey, this is the Apogee coupler in RockSim, but in real life it weighs this. You can always shoot us an email and say this isn't right in RockSim, and then I can add it to my list, because you guys use RockSim a lot more than, you know, not a lot more than we do because we use it all the time, but all of you times, you know, the thousands and thousands of users of RockSim use it more and use it differently. That's the other thing. Like I use it a very specific way. Tim uses it very differently than I use it. So, so yeah, that's one way to, whoops, get a little peek at our chat system there. We're working on a new nose cone, so you guys got a little flash view of that. So yes, so that's kind of how you edit parts and things. And remember, RockSim uses what's in there. So at the end of the day, it's only as smart as the data that's in there. And if something's incorrect, then the data you're going to get could be incorrect for that too. So Carlos asks, after we run a simulation with a motor, can RockSim recommend a suggested fin shape or material? Maybe someday. RockSim is not that smart. Part of the problem is, what are you trying to do? You know, can recommend a suggested fin shape or material to do what? Are you trying to go faster? Are you trying to go higher? You're trying to lose weight on the rocket? You know, that's part of it, is to recommend something, there has to be a set parameter list. So RockSim recommends, we built into RockSim 10, the recommended motor list. So you can actually go and say, we used to, I'll just show you guys. So I'm going to show you, I don't know why you're being grumpy. And be quiet, chat. Um, so we built this feature, the recommended motor feature, into RockSim for us. It's a benefit for you guys as well, but whenever we release a new kit or we sell a kit from another manufacturer, we create a RockSim file and we run all of the recommended motors. So for something like the Zephyr, that's a lot of motors. And before RockSim 10, and which is what we did for the Zephyr originally, you have to run each motor one at a time. So you go kind of, we were showing at the beginning, you have your rocket and you click load and choose engine and find your engine and change your delay and click OK and set your starting state and set your launch conditions. And those we'll remember, but, and then you go, OK, launch. And what we do is we would always run it for the longest delay. This didn't work because this is a tiny motor and a bigger rocket, but we run it for the longest delay. And then once we figure out if the motor is safe to fly, then we would have to go back and rerun it to figure out, sometimes optimal delay, it'll tell you, but sometimes there's tweaking that you can do. Like it says it's not recommended, but if you were to angle the launch rod, suddenly it is recommended. So imagine that times these hundreds of motors. So what we built into RockSim 10 is the recommended motor list. So you can now, when you go to choose an engine, you can click recommend motors. And then, but like I was saying with the fin shape, this is where this comes in a little bit, Carlos, is so to even do the recommended motors, we had to say, well, what's okay and what's not. What are your starting simulation? Are you flying at sea level? Are you flying at 6,000 feet? Is temperature warm? Is it cold? Is it windy? Is it not windy? All of those things make different parameters for, generate different results. So to do recommended motors, you have to set those. And that's what you can see right here. Basically, these are the parameters we say we're going to run recommended motors. You can change them by clicking the use recommend condition or use my values. If you click use my values, you can go in and, sorry, I was thinking it asked you there. You have to set those here before you hit the recommend motors. I just use the default ones most of the time, so I forget how that works. So we're at 700 feet, which here in Colorado, not accurate. Wind speed, constant 8 miles per hour. Tim errs on the side of it being a little bit more windy. Where most of us live these days now, it's pretty rare to have like a completely calm day. So it's better to be a little bit conservative, saying, oh, it's going to be a little windy. If it's calm on a windy day, your rocket's going to go further. And the only kind of downside to that is that your delay might be a little bit short. So your parachute might pop out at the wrong time because it's going to coast longer because it doesn't have the wind pushing on it. But we set these things. So to do the fin shape, to do any sort of recommended anything really in the software, you have to say, what are you trying to do? What are the parameters, you have? And that's where it gets really tricky for that. Also, for something like fins, fin location, do you have through the wall fins or not? Those can impact things. You get fin flutter if the material is really thin. So it can just really get kind of tough to do recommended things. This took a long time to even run this. So I'll just show you guys. We're going to run this for this. And one thing you'll notice if you use the recommended motors feature is that it does not work for two-stage rockets, because that just adds a whole other level of complexity that was just beyond really the time frame more than anything. I'm sure we probably could do it, but it's just so complicated because then you're introducing a second motor, the combination of motors, the two stages when they separate. It just gets really, really complicated too. So boom, in like maybe 30 seconds, I now have a list of all the recommended or not recommended motors. So this is showing all the recommended motors right now. If you right click you can turn that off and show all the motors. So you can say, hey, I love the Aerotech E20. Why is it not recommended? And you can scroll through here and see, sometimes it'll say why. Safe deployment. I'm not sure why, so let's watch our little cartoon to see why this isn't recommended. It says, oh, safe deployment, it's unsafe. I see. So this was not recommended because the deployment is not safe because so if I double click in there to go into the details, recovery system, so the velocity at deployment, 65 miles per hour. And if you look at our recommended motors, oh, it doesn't say it here. For this one, but that's too fast. If it's going 65, think about driving down the interstate at 65 miles per hour and then throwing a parachute out the window and hoping it doesn't rip apart. So that's why it's not recommended. So there are different things you can do. So this is, it's not recommended, but you might be able to, this one isn't adjustable, but on an adjustable motor, you might be able to tweak the delay down a little bit so that it comes out just a little bit sooner, a little bit later, or we'll buy one that's later, or something. Or you can use something like a shoot release or dual deployment, but you could, so just because it's not recommended doesn't mean you can't use the motor. It just means you have to start thinking outside the box a little bit about why isn't this recommended? Another example is like weathercocking. So it doesn't, let's pick one that's maybe, here we go. Weathercocking for this. So basically, whoops. So when we look at this, so this is the weathercocking cone. So if it goes outside this cone before the parachute pops out, see how it's basically starting to go like horizontally? That's not really safe because it could do some damage. And with the recommended motors, once it reaches that point, it doesn't keep going. But okay, how do we fix the weathercocking issue? Well, if you want to use this motor, so we're going to use our super nifty load engines trick that we started at the beginning. But so it's weathercocking to the left. So what we can do is let's angle our launch rod to the right 10 degrees. That's a lot. Let's try this again. And now I broke something. So now it didn't weathercock at all because I basically corrected for that. So this motor, for some reason, oh, because we ran the recommended motors, it didn't have a delay selected. I forgot. So when it runs the recommended motors, it'll tell you the optimal delay, but it doesn't actually choose it. So if you load your engines, when you go in here, oh, and this isn't a plug motor anyway, so this is not a good motor for this rocket, but make sure you put in a delay. So that's why it crashed. But other than that fact, we corrected for that weathercocking. So now it's safe. So just because a motor is not recommended doesn't mean you can't use it. You just have to make sure that you overcome, if it says that your launch guide departure is too slow, so it's not safe, the liftoff speed. So your rocket needs to be going like around 30 miles per hour when it leaves the launch rod to be safe. That way it can correct itself if a gust of wind hits it or whatever. Well, if this isn't powerful enough to get you there, what are your options? You can change your motor, get a more powerful motor, or you can extend your launch rod. So if we're flying, if our starting state is, this one's 9 feet or 8 feet. So you're probably not getting much longer than 8 feet. But say it was 3 feet, well, then maybe you could get a 6 foot rod. And then that by that time you have 3 extra feet for your rocket to get going faster. So that's one of the things about the recommended motor. You can totally use it and just ignore all the ones that are not recommended. That is fine. It's a starting place. It says, hey, these work well. It's kind of, a no-brainer. This is what we can say. But just because it says not recommended doesn't mean you can't use them. There are some that you absolutely can't use. You're not going to put a little tiny quarter A motor in this rocket. It's just you're never gonna get a combination that makes it safe. But this E20, you can just, figure out maybe on a calm day, it won't be going 65 miles per hour when the parachute pops out. So, I can fly this rocket on an E20. I just have to wait for a really calm day to do it for it to be safe. Or this is, it's not, the liftoff speed's unsafe. So maybe I need to get a longer launch rod. So it's kind of a cool tool. So yeah, Carlos, it would be great if we could give you more flexibility and like that. The one other downside to doing something like this is a recommended fin shape for a rocket is that a lot of schools do projects like that. We get calls a lot from kids to basically do their homework for them. They'll call and say, what's the best fin shape? Or you can tell they're filling out a form and they're just reading the questions and wanting us to answer the questions. So part of it too is it does help build a little bit of critical thinking. I think that's one of the things that this RockSim Live and Tim's really good at too is, it's always the problem solving. And I feel like that's a skill that's becoming less and less valued, or less and less used, at least, when you have things like Google giving you the answers. Google, what's the speed of light or whatever. You don't have to really do much research. You just pop it in. Or now we've got the Chat GPT mess, and so like you don't even have to think at all. So one of the things is, while it's great for it to tell you different things, I think it's also great to use your skills a little bit and to think, because like with this example, you can totally use this recommended motors list, but there's no thinking really involved other than, okay, from this list, which motors do I want? Which one's the cheapest? Which one can I get without hazmat shipping? Which one do I already have in my range box? That's kind of the extent of maybe, I'm flying on a smaller field. Which one would be the best one that's not going to go as high? But if you, say, I've got this, F24 motor, or let's pick one that's, I don't know why the E7 is even really, but the Apogee E6. I've got this E6 in my range box. I really want to use it, but this RockSim says it's not recommended. Like, do you just go, nope, okay, I can't, or how can I maybe make this work? And I feel like as Rocketeers, we kind of naturally do a little bit of that. Just, I'm designing a new rocket. What shape should the fins be? Should I bought this kit. Should I build it the way it's intended to be built? Or should I modify it? Should I kit bash and take two kits and put them together? Should I paint it the color that's on the face card? Should I paint it my own way? I do feel like we learn a little bit just naturally in the hobby, which is great, I think, for that. And rant, that was kind of a long spiel. Let's see. So Carlos says, I'm at teardrop for subsonic, sharp for supersonic. Yeah. Shape, like airfoil shape and things like that. Keep your eyes out. There are some things in the works about that. So I don't know. I honestly don't know if Tim's talked about it, and hopefully I don't get in trouble for mentioning it. But there are some things kind of in the works to hopefully help with that a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So then Rohan asks, can you recommend a video that will help building a rocket for a beginner? I can. I absolutely can. So on the Apogee website, we have these really nifty things called quick start guides. I think the video is linked on there too, but if you go up to how to and guides, quick start guides. This is a great place if you're new to any sort of step of the hobby. So you may have built a lot of beginner rockets and now you're ready to go move to mid power. Maybe you're ready to get high power certified. Maybe you want to do dual deployment. There's a lot of different things. So we made these quick start guides for the different kind of general groups of people as you kind of progress along. So there is this I'm new to rocketry, model rocketry, which is a great place to start for just kind of explaining about a model rocket, how it works, how does it fly. We have these cool animations. If you ever wondered how motors burn, like we kind of don't think about it much, and black powder and composites burn totally differently. So we have this nifty little animation that shows you how this works. So this is a black powder motor. So you hook it up, you push the button, and then it goes through, and then it burns. And you can see how it burned there. And there's a little explanation for each one. So I always think these animations are cool. I'm old enough that this is still spiffy to me, even with, CGI and all the things that are out there now. So kind of covering everything you need. This is prepping for launch. It also has a link to the apprentice starter set. So the video is not actually linked here. I should fix that. But under how-to and guides as well. Let's see. Oh, yeah, rocketry how-to and technical info. So getting started, how to build a rocket. This is a video series we did a long time ago, building the Apogee Avion kit. So the Avion is a basic kit that has 3 fins, a nose cone. It's got wood fins. So you can watch through these here. This is, you can tell this is a little old looking through here. Also, oh, that's super old. Look at Tim. Look how baby Tim. So there's that series there. Also, if you get the apprentice starter set, which is kind of the go-to, like if you don't have any of the equipment you need to get started, this is always something we recommend. So it comes with a launch pad, launch controller, 3 motors, recovery wadding, and it also comes with a DVD on how to build this kit, there as well. And then there's a video down here too on the apprentice kit. This one's a little more updated there. So those are both really good resources. This one has a plastic fin unit. So instead of gluing on the fins individually, you're gluing on just one piece. So that's what kind of the difference between the two is. But those are both great. And then if you're looking for general kind of how to, like maybe not how to build a rocket from beginning to end, although there's some of that too, but just general building tips, if you go under how to and guides and advanced construction videos, and then click over here, you can either go to all videos or topic index, and this will take you to all of our hundreds of videos. This one doesn't have the like little explanations because it's already broken out other than the title. But construction techniques, rocket build is like a kit, like the apprentice or the Avion. They're like building a specific kit. But if you just go to the general, not the topical one, these ones have a little bit more of a description. So these are all building the gliding parachute, which is the one series we've been doing. This one is missing a title. Need to fix that. So, how to keep model rocket parachutes from tangling after launch, how to fix the smashed fin tip. I mean, you fly your rocket, it lands a little hard and it smashes the fin tip. How to fix a kinked body tube. We're at 377. So, and one way, because it is a little overwhelming, is to do a find on the page, which is Command F or Control F, I think, on Windows. And then, like, if you want to know about nose cones, you can type in nose or nose cones. So this is the X15 video series, building that kit. So if you're building a specific kit, you can look on the kit page and see if there are videos for building it. Or you could find a kit that's similar. In here, we have building a high power kit. So we have lots of different videos here. But Rohan, hopefully that gets you started. There's so much information on our website. I know it's overwhelming, But basically, if you get to kind of the videos section, there's a lot there that will really help. And all of this is free, so you can watch it online there too. And if you need something specific and you can't find it, shoot us an email. It's possible we don't have a video for it, and that we're always looking for topics to do our videos on. At 377, it's sometimes hard to find unique topics or unique takes on topics. How many videos do we have on painting? But they're all slightly different, and they have different tips and things. So that's a really great resource there. So looking at the chat here and looking at the time. Okay. Yeah. And Carlos says it's on the Avion webpage too. So you can go to the Avion kit page and watch the videos as well. So Rick asks, can the default start data be saved so you don't need to enter it every time? Yes, starting state. I feel like it remembers, there's not like a place, let's see, preferences. I think it remembers. This is why I'm trying to remember now. It kind of remembers some things. And I know if you want to have it remember, you can factory reset here. We're in preferences, miscellaneous factory reset. So, and I know because we've run into problems where people have changed things and not realized it. And going back to the Zephyr kit where we had to do all of those motors individually, the person who was doing it, she ran a bunch of the motors one day, and then the next day kept going, and all of a sudden none of the motors worked. And I mean, she was like, this makes no sense, like these motors should work fine based on the other ones. And it turns out somewhere along the way she got her launch rod horizontal, so of course none of the motors worked because the rocket was already on the ground basically when it started. And it was one of those things where it got changed and she didn't realize it, and she had to send me the file to look at, and I was like, oh, oops. So I know it does remember things to a point, but whether it remembers them file to file or every time, let's see. Let's test and see. Because I know we were doing that before where we had, so like 6230. We're going to put our altitude here. And today it is 40 degrees outside. I don't remember what our latitude is here. And we're going to say today is 7 miles per hour wind here. So, okay, I'm going to choose an engine here. We're just going to launch something. Here. Okay, so we flew our rocket. I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to open different rocket kit and choose my engine. And if I go to my launch conditions, it has remembered my data here. So it's remembering it time to time. But let's quit RockSim and reopen it. I know it remembered some stuff, I just don't remember. So there's not a default, but there's not a default setting that you can go in and say always start at 6,000 feet or whatever. So file, open, let's pick a totally different rocket than the ones we've flown today. I can tell I like my Dynastar kits. They're just good solid ones. So then if I choose my engine and go to my launch conditions, so for some reason it's rounding, which is interesting. But it has saved my temperature. It saved all my stuff again. So basically, unless you change it, it should remember it. Or if you go into your flight simulations and click edit or rerun, it will run them, with those other parameters. So So yeah, so hopefully, Rick, you can kind of do that. The big thing is, you can set your weather conditions and things. If people tend to launch in kind of the same places, so that's easy. The big sticking thing would be your launch rod, launch rail length. That's something that gets me. Like we were flying the Rising Star on an 8-foot rail, basically, even though it flies on a rod, because I don't always remember to check that. So I know that one can get me in trouble sometimes because I'm like, oh, this motor works fine because it's flying on an 8-foot rail, but I'm only going to be flying on a 4-foot rod, and that motor wouldn't work in that case. So that's the one thing to check. But hopefully it should remember that flight to flight for the most part. So Sturco 3 says trying to enter a fin onto a body tube and having trouble with extending the fin starting from the end of the body tube and going further back at an angle of 1.5 inches than horizontal. So I have two different ideas about what you're kind of asking about. So we're going to start with one and then go to the other. So your fins. One of the things is, so RockSim likes to default, like if your location on the actual tube. So sometimes this one will let me, but sometimes it won't let you go past the end of the tube. So you can manually type, if the slider bar doesn't let you, you can manually type it in, or like say it's from the base of the tube. How did you reset? So you'll notice the slider bar, normally it doesn't really go negative. So you can type in, but if it doesn't go to where you want, like say it only goes to negative, in this case it's going to negative 3.5. But I could type in -8. I mean, I don't know why your fins would be back here, but you can do that. So if you're having trouble with the actual positioning of the fin, this location is where you want to be. And you can it's either from the front of the tube that it measures, or the back of the tube. Doesn't matter which one you choose. I think it defaults to the front. I use the base a lot. The biggest time when this is useful, like important, I would say, is if you're kind of playing with, like, say, the length of your body tube. So if you're playing with the length of your body tube and you start out with your body tube being, say, 6 inches, and your fins are measured from the front of the body tube 6 inches back, but say then you're like, well, what would happen if I made this twice as long and it's 12 inches? If you measure from the front of the tube, your fins are only going to be 6 inches back. If you measure from the base of the tube, it's always going to be relative to the back. So that's where the base fin location comes in handy, is if you're kind of messing with that. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, it's just which point are you measuring from. You can also measure from the nose tip. That seems confusing to me, but whatever works for you. The second part of your question sounds like you're trying to design a fin that, like, probably starts like this and then goes in an angle and then horizontal or something like that. So it's a funny shape, basically, is what you're trying to do. So this goes oddly. In that case, so this is a default kind of fence. You're using it like a trapezoidal standard fin. If you're trying to do something different, let me just delete these fins. So instead of using the regular fins, because those will be standard shapes, so they're going to be a trapezoid or elliptical. So there's nothing you can do about that. Tickle in my throat. So let's see. No. So instead of using the regular fin button, you're going to want to use the custom fins button. So the custom fins, you can still choose from the database, but you can go to the plan points tab, and this is where you can get a little goofy. What if you want? So now you can start putting in extra tabs. So your rocket, but you can't. I know you can do fins that taper down, um, but I haven't done any in a long time. But so then you can just add a plan point. So you can draw, your fin can be any kind of like shape you want. So maybe instead of like this, maybe it comes here. The other thing you can do, it doesn't like that, is you can edit the points here. So like this point, which I guess is this guy. So will it let me do a negative? Ha! That's how we can do it. If you can't, if it doesn't let you kind of drag and drop. So if you want your fin to kind of like, see, you can see right here on my drawing. So it does this. So you have to use, so just remember you're using custom fin set, not the standard fins, because custom, then you can design whatever you want. And then, just draw your shape here. And once you have your plan points, then you can also, so just kind of get a rough shape even, and then you can measure your points and you can type in negatives. So now we have these points here and my bids look super cool here. And then you can tweak it, the location to get it. So maybe it, depending on your rocket, this won't work for your motor, but so yeah. Oops, that was not, I broke it. So, yeah, so hopefully, does that make sense, Dirk? Does that answer your question on how you can do kind of the fins in weird places? So, and Terry, that's what Terry said too in the chat. So hopefully that gets you there. So just remember, custom fin set, that's where you can do kind of goofy, strange shaped fins and then locate them however, and you can do the angles. In the standard ones, you're kind of locked into, you can do, just pick a, sorry. You can do some fun thing, like funny things, but no matter what you do, there's still, a trapezoid. So you can't do, a random bump somewhere with these. So just depending on what your fins look like, you might be able to make this work or not if you're trying to do funny things. These can get tricky just trying to hone in on the different angles and things. I've definitely struggled with that before too, trying to get my fins exactly how I want. So that's where honestly, even if you're doing a trapezoid, you can do a custom fin that's a trapezoid. Sometimes that's easier because then you could just say it's point here, point here, point here. And you don't have to worry about the semi-span or the sweep angle for that. So yeah, cool. That did answer your question. So yay. These are questions I can answer today. It's always exciting. So the other question we got in the email that Tim answered the customer already, but what has to do with, I should have run these before, now that I'm thinking about it. So I need a two-stage rocket, actually. Okay. So when you, let me just load. I did funny things here, so. So you run a simulation with a two-stage rocket, and you go to the 2D flight profile, and you fly it. And this is using the default. You can see I changed my background to Mars at some point, which you can do in the preferences. So this is just the default rocket: blue nose cone, blue fins, yellow tube. And then they're really tiny. You can see the booster fell off and was coming down, and then the rocket's coming down. And this rocket does not have a parachute in the booster, but we are going to put one in for So when you have multiple, the default in RockSim is the parachute will pop out at the max ejection delay. So you're flying a B6-4, your rocket will go up, and 4 seconds after the motor burns out, stops burning, your parachute will pop out. But for a two-stage, your motor motor ejection charge is set to go off at 0. So you don't want your parachute popping out there, because that 0 is what pushes it's what pushes your motor, your 2 stages apart for black powder motors. So your parachute has to come out at a different time, theoretically. I think you can still set it and you can set it for whatever. So deploy at stage separation, deploy at time after stage separation, deploy at altitude. We're just going to deploy at stage separation. So basically, when the 2 pieces of the rocket separate, that top part's going to pull the parachute out of the bottom one, so it's going to come out on its own. So now we're going to launch this again. And we look at our little cartoon. And the booster is hiding there, but there's no, let me turn off smoke effects. There we go. It's blocking my way. Okay. So there's our little booster right there, but there's no parachute. And so the person was like, the parachute's not working. So in this little 2D flight simulation, you can also make it look like your rocket. So instead of looking at like this blue and yellow rocket, it's actually going to look like the Skymetra. To do that, you have to run sprites. You go into your preferences and go to rocket image, and then basically we are going to, I highly, highly, highly recommend putting these in a folder, because it produces like hundreds of files when you run this. And if you put it, say, on your desktop, it gets a little crazy. Oops, I didn't run my sprites. Choose path, generate. So basically, it's going to take little pictures of the rocket in every different little step, like the old-timey cartoons where they took a picture of every single drawing, and it's going to generate those. And so basically what we're looking at is, even when you generate the sprites and it looks like a rocket, your booster stage parachute is never going to show up. It just wasn't part of RockSim when it was built. And I don't know if there was a reason why it wasn't possible at the time, or it just wasn't a priority. I'm not sure. Since we've been looking ahead to the 3D stuff, we don't really want to invest a lot of time in the 2D profile, because that's old news. So now it's loading it. So now it's really tiny, but that's not my Skymetra. But when we launch it, gosh, there's no parachute there still. But when the parachute pops out here, it's showing up there. It's really, really tiny. I don't know why this is so tiny. Basically, they were saying it doesn't work. It does work, but the way you have to see it is to plot it in the graphs to see the data change. So, but in the launch visualizer, you can do this. Let's save this here. We're going to go to the launch visualizer. And we're at 3 o'clock, so I will be quick. Oh, I got to log out. I'm in my super admin person. Okay. So I'm going to choose my design. Oh, wait. Upload new design. And we're going to grab the Skymetra rocket. But the one thing, well, no, this does work. Let's see. Choose motor. Oh, I set this up right in RockSim. The one thing you have to do is you have to set the upper stage. Wait, what am I looking for? This is why this is better when Tim does this, because he messes with this stuff and I don't. You have to set your upper stage up. This is not coming in as a 2-stage for some reason. This only has one motor. Something's up with this. I'm not sure what's going on because it's a, oh, this is also not the right kit. Upload. I didn't select it. That's why. Losing my mind. Select. I didn't upload it. There we go. I knew I was correct. It's been a long day. Okay, so now we have our two motors here. So we'll just do an 8. This is the upper stage. So, okay. I'm going to click load all, and then I'm just going to change the delay to 0 here. And then flight events. So then we set our staging and max ejection delay, our parachute in the upper stage at max ejection delay, and then our booster at max ejection delay, which is also stage separation in this case. So we're going to launch it, simulate. So now we zoom out. Should have, whoa, we zoomed out a little far. I am zoomed out so far. Okay. You can't really see it because of the smoke. Parachute should be showing up here. Not sure why it's not. Oh, I think it is. It's just, it should show up. And now I've lost it. In the launch visualizer, it does work. I'm not sure why it's not right now. Might have to have Tim show you guys next week, or I can take a look at it and add a note to the website about this one. But there we go. Wait, I saw it. I just scrolled a little too far. There's our parachute. So in the launch visualizer, that was a long way to get here. You can see both the parachutes. So, or in RockSim Pro in the 3D visualizer, you can see it. So that's one way you can test a rocket if you feel like it's not working properly for something like that. You can definitely do it. Okay. And then Tom Kuhn asks, I may have missed this. How do you add a component like an engine mount, chute release, or Arduino Nano that is a mass object not in your catalog? This is a quick one. I can show you how to do this. Let's close out of here. So in RockSim, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your rocket that you're building, and you're going to add, so this time it won't be in the database, but say I want to add a mass object, like there's this lovely payload, clear payload tube up here. I want to put an altimeter in it. So we go to our mass object, but the Arduino altimeter is not in here. We got perfect flight ones and things, Drell, but we don't have the Arduino. So you hit cancel because it's not in the database. So you're going to write your Arduino Nano. And I know nothing about what size this is, but let's say it's 1 ounce. And then the location, you're going to put it here. So this doesn't really matter for the database part, but so we have our data. So you have to put the data in first, the first time. Then you're going to go to this database tab, and you're going to change the manufacturer to whatever you want. You can put Arduino if it's you buy it from somebody, it's an Apogee coupler, it's a lock coupler, whatever. Or it's, you can put your name in if you made it yourself. Michelle's super cool, part. You can give it a part number if they have a part number. So we're just going to call it Nano, and the part description doesn't really matter. So we put it in here. Now we're going to save it to the database. So you click there, and it's going to put an Arduino Nano into the database. You click OK and OK. So now I go to open my Rising Star, and I have my super cool clear payload bay, and I go to mass object. Now, when I go to my database, there's my Arduino Nano. So you can absolutely save things to your database. For individual parts, it's super easy. If you want to do like a motor mount, which is, you know, a tube and centering rings, that's a subassembly. Tim has gone over that a couple weeks ago in the RockSim Live, and I don't use them too much, so probably better to just go back to the RockSim Live historical page and look for the subassembly. You can see here, there's the subassembly button, so you can kind of build it from there, but same deal. When you do a subassembly, you go load parts from a file, and then you open up the file. So you can do that as well for like motor mounts and things, but absolutely put them in the database, the things you do. Say you take a standard part like an Apogee nose cone and you have modified it. So you always build the Apogee nose cone by cutting, you know, or you cut the tip off of it and you use it as a transition. So you can save it, you know, save your modified version of it in your database, and it'll be there. So it's really handy. When we weren't able to add parts as easily, that's how I put Tark parts in, like the foamy nose cones and things. In RockSim 9, I just had the file and I would send it to people and say, save this to your database. So yeah, super easy. Just add the part to your Rocket and then use that database tab. Just make sure you save it, because if you just add the part to your Rocket and don't save it to the database, it won't be there for next time. But super easy. Yeah. So yeah. So I think that's everything. Johannes, you can check out the recap. All of these are posted on our website. You can go to, is it loading? It's thinking about loading. Chrome. Oh, I know why it's not loading. Because I have my chat over here. This has just been a crazy week, crazy day. If you go under How to and Guide Software, RockSim Live Training, or this is the way I go because it's just easier. I go to the homepage and click on the little picture of Tim, RockSim Live, take you to the same place. So this is where we store all of our stuff. We're 110 episodes today. It's crazy. Still feels new. So it has the episode number, the date, the link to YouTube, so you can watch it directly on YouTube, or you can, well, it'll take you there no matter what. But and then there's a little synopsis of what we talked about in the RockSim Live, and these tell you the times, and if they're clickable. The newer ones are clickable, but the old ones aren't. It will literally, I want to know what's a good rock up for level 1 certification. I click here, and it will take me right to 1 hour and 21 minutes into the RockSim Live after we watch the ad. To there, you can even see the chat from last time. So if you want to catch up with all your Rocket buds, you can still see the chats. But see, we're 1 hour and 21 minutes in. So yeah, it'll take you there. So you can always look up and see. You can also, again, use the find. So I'm looking up subassemblies. So Tim talks about subassemblies there. And can you save subassemblies into the parts folder? That's the question. So you want to go to episode 104 at 1 hour and 10 minutes in. Tim talks about that. So that would be like a motor mount, usually is the most common subassembly. Anything that's a combination of parts that you want to save, you know, a coupler, a motor tube, a centering ring, those aren't subassemblies. You can just save those in the individual databases. But yeah, this is where they're all saved. So check them out. If you missed one, Johannes, you can check it out. It usually doesn't get posted until Monday or Tuesday of the week after. So it'll be like next Monday or Tuesday, just because we have to go through and create this, and it has to render after we're done for a while. So yeah, check in next week, and Tim will be back next Friday. And yeah, So thank you guys for asking great questions and putting up with me today. I think everything mostly went good, went well. So hopefully you learned something new, and we will see you next time, not last time. We will see